This is the ETB Network NFL Free Agency Frenzy, presented by Playback.
As I'm firing poorly on the music. All right, welcome everybody to the ETB Network NFL Free Agency Frenzy, presented by Playback. This is a good time, at least in the NFL world, because we're going to get to the free agency moves. NFL free agency has kind of been interesting already right off the top. And we're going to break it all down. So, the whole ETB Network crew is here from some of our miserable teams, including Nick D and myself, being Jet fans. Actually, they just made a move, which we'll get to in a minute or two. But if you're looking to find us on social media, before we get to all the madness, make sure you follow us on social media at TFB Forecast ETB, all social media platforms, youtube.com/ETB Network, where this is actually streaming right now to YouTube and a bunch of other platforms currently as we are live doing this NFL free agency frenzy. And all right, let's get to work. So before we break down any official NFL free agency moves, can we talk about Twitter going down at the beginning of NFL free agency tampering period and just totally... Wait, Nick, you're muted. Now go.
What are you talking about? I never heard about this.
You didn't hear about this?
When did it happen? Today?
No, it happened on the first
Monday.
day of the legal tampering period.
Twitter went down? I must have slept through it.
You probably did. But yes, so all of a sudden I'm on my device, my phone, as I'm going through all the NFL news, and all of a sudden Twitter gives me the blue circle, and I'm like, great. Right at the time when I'm looking for all the NFL free agency moves, and shit happens.
Yeah, not only did Twitter go down, but for me, Twitter went down 3 times in the span of 2 hours.
Four times, I counted.
Wow.
Mine as well. For me, the worst part about it was Twitter decides to go down like at 10:58, right when things were supposed to, be like leaked out, or something like that. And guys like us, we're starting our live stream shows for this that are all day, and we're we don't have Twitter, so we're like trying to figure out a different way to do it so we can announce the news that does get announced during the period. And luckily, ESPN has a
ticker,
a thread of the NFL beat reporters for news and stuff. So that was luckily a good loophole. But look, I mean, I thought everything was going to go down. I'm like, oh my God, this is the worst time for this.
Yeah, I mean, because what do we do now in the world of sports? We watch Adam Schefter, we watch Ian Rappaport, and we just basically watch, or Tom Pelissero, or any guy, the top insiders.
Yep.
We don't care about anybody else in the sport. We just care about the NFL insiders and what they break, or if Aaron Rodgers decides to pick a team anytime soon. And I think we got a little deeked because there was a report that he was going to say where he was going when he was on the Pat McAfee show earlier today, and that didn't happen. By the way, he's an idiot. I'm just going to flat out say it. You're going to hear me say that quite a few times on this stream.
Wait, who are you talking about? Rodgers?
Yes, Aaron Rodgers. You and I spent a
I didn't know. I
moratorium
couldn't
on
tell
it.
if you were talking about Rodgers or McAfee.
Well, McAfee's got his own set of problems, but no, Aaron should just retire. That's my opinion on it.
I mean, he is 40, so
An old 40, if you ask me. But I guess we'll start there what do we think about the whole Aaron Rodgers nonsense? I mean, I'll save Nick and I for last because we're a little too close to this situation. So I guess I'll start with Grant. Grant, what do you think about this Aaron Rodgers situation?
Well, I just said that he's 40, and the two teams that he's apparently choosing between are the New York Giants and the Pittsburgh Steelers. You know, he tormented us Bears fans for 18 out of his 20-year career so far, or whatever, however long his career is. So I want Aaron Rodgers to suck. So I want you to go to the Giants so you can be an absolute shithole quarterback for a year. But I screw you, Aaron Rodgers. I don't care about you. Get out of football.
So you're like me. You just want him to retire.
Yes.
Well, I think he's closer to the situation than we are because he's a lifelong Bears fan.
Yeah, but we had to deal with him on our team.
Nobody hates Aaron Rodgers. No, what I'm saying is nobody hates Aaron Rodgers more than Bears fans do.
Well, wasn't it Aaron who said basically I live in Bears fans' heads basically when he was at?
He does.
That is a good.
He said that, and then he famously said that he owned us, which he did. So
yeah, Bears fans. Only Ben and Anthony are remotely objective in this case, and even in their case, I don't know. They're AFC East fans, so what can I? All of us are biased.
That's a good point. Ben, what do you think about the Rodgers situation?
True. It's true. Now that I think about it, we are outnumbered by a bunch of AFC East fans on this stream. Yeah, that's true.
We don't have that camaraderie. We're not like SEC fans,
No. Ben, what do you think?
I don't really care, to be honest, at this point where he goes. I'm going to be really honest. I mean, he's washed at this point in time. I mean, yeah, he had a decent year last year, kind of given when he was out there. I mean, he played pretty well the last couple of games. But, it doesn't really matter specifically where he's going to go because I know for a fact that, he's a cancer to whatever type of organization he's going to go to. I mean, the Giants specifically, I don't think it's going to be more of a cancer per se, but I just think that the whole entire situation is just going to be awful there. Like, the offensive line is absolutely brutal. And he already played in the New York atmosphere. And, I just – it's what it is, I guess. I mean, you're also going to be going to a really tough division in the NFC East with the Eagles and the Commanders obviously a lot better than you. And then you go to Pittsburgh, right? And, the AFC North is still really, really competitive also. So – literally the two places that he could be going to, I don't see, getting a 40-year-old Aaron Rodgers is going to completely change the trajectory of either of these teams. I mean, I guess between the two against Pittsburgh because they just got DK Metcalf, but I don't really see much specifically of an improve. I mean, if you're talking maybe 5-6 years ago, yeah, I can understand that, but you're getting him really at the back end of his career. So yeah, I don't really care.
Well, before we go any further, another breaking move by the Jets.
Yeah, just saw it.
According to Ari Mirev, the Jets have released CJ Mosley. So,
yeah, I saw that.
So the Jets are just cutting cap. Let's just admit what's going on currently. The Jets are just waving that flag, and they're just like, we give up. We surrender.
Yep, that's the perfect.
They're better defensive players, by the way.
No, I get it, but we're just giving up. We're just throwing everybody away at this point. Anthony, thoughts on this situation with Aaron Rodgers?
Yeah, I mean, I know CJ Mosley is a great player when he's on the field. He definitely struggles here and there with injuries, and they do got some other good linebackers. Quincy Williams is not too bad. I know they gave Sherwood a contract extension. For a young player, I like him as well, so I think they just want to go younger at that position. I know a lot of people in this live stream have said Aaron Rodgers is washed. Now, he's not prime Green Bay Packers Aaron Rodgers, but I think he's far from being washed. I mean, the guy threw 28 touchdowns last year behind a terrible offensive line, a dysfunctional organization, and a defense that really played poor throughout most of the season. So I think if you put him on a team like Pittsburgh, who has DK Metcalf, who has George Pickens, with TJ Watt in that defense, with Mike Tomlin, who's obviously going to have that great culture established to where Aaron Rodgers is not going to be able to be a cancer in the locker room, I think he could have great success in Pittsburgh. And like I said before, Nick, on ETB, I think if you put Aaron Rodgers on the Steelers, I think they are a second-round team, and the Steelers have been a franchise who consistently has been losing in the first round the last few years.
I mean, I don't know. The Jets are a dysfunctional
Anthony,
mess.
you do have a point considering the Steelers have not gotten out of the first round since 2016. So you do have a point.
But I'll make another point, and actually, we went back and forth on this, Anthony and I, on ETB, which drops. It's actually currently airing right now as we speak. I said, I don't know if that was will Mike Tomlin want to deal with Aaron Rodgers and the nonsense necessary that it takes to deal with Aaron Rodgers? Is Mike Tomlin going to want to say, go ahead, enjoy your Pat McAfee show appearance every week? I just don't see that. That's not a Mike Tomlin thing. He's a very buttoned up coach that doesn't allow nonsense to go on in his locker room. So
I mean, you're talking about the same guy who coached Juju Smith-Schuster and Antonio Brown.
Agree.
Anthony's right. I agree.
Point.
Anthony's right.
That
Mike Tomlin is very overrated as a head coach. I don't really think that, like you say, he's buttoned up. Like that just isn't really true. When so many of
He's as strict as it gets.
No, I think you can be much strict. Well, first of all, he is strict. That is true. Like, I think the Steelers have a culture of have a Yankees type of culture, which is like a culture of control. That doesn't mean that everything is buttoned up exactly, because all sorts of chaos has gone on with the Steelers. I mean, a lot of Mike Tomlin's teams have been very undisciplined. He's had a lot of crazy players, as Anthony said, Antonio Brown. They've also, a lot of his teams have also been highly penalized. And in a lot of ways, I just don't think it's true that the Steelers are a buttoned up team. I think that Mike Tomlin is just kind of a controlling head coach in a sense. But that doesn't mean everything he does is buttoned up. Mike Tomlin, I think, is legitimately the most overrated head coach in the NFL. I'm not saying he's a bad head coach, but he's extremely overrated.
I guess, but I don't know. I don't think Pittsburgh makes the most sense. Everyone's saying it's a perfect fit.
No. No.
And first of all, I don't think, and I'm going to say the same thing that the Jets were delusional about when they said, we're an Aaron Rodgers away from winning a Super Bowl. The Jets were living in a pipe dream and wearing rose-colored glasses, apparently, because they thought they were an Aaron Rodgers away.
In fairness, I think that if the Steelers believe that they're an Aaron Rodgers away from winning the Super Bowl, they're I would say exponentially more delusional than the Jets were for thinking that. Because at least with the Jets, the last season that he played, he had an MVP caliber season in 2021. The Jets had a really, really good roster, especially on defense, outside of Zach Wilson. And then Aaron Rodgers gets hurt, and I don't know if he ever really fully recovered. It's not I don't think it was that delusional to think that based on what we saw from Rodgers and from the Jets the season before that. Who's going to know? They couldn't have predicted that he was going to get injured after 3 snaps. With the Steelers, I think it would be significantly more delusional because we've seen Rodgers with the Jets and we've seen the Steelers in that division. But you know what? I would rather Russell Wilson right now than Aaron Rodgers from the way they've been playing.
We'll get to that in a second because that's another thing we'll get to. But these teams are delusional to think, this guy is going to drive their team to the promised land. I feel like if this guy can stay up on one leg more than drive their team to the promised land, and you're going to have to deal with this sound every time he plays.
RELAX.
Are you just going to hear that every single guys, relax. I can lead this team. And first of all, imagine if he were to end up in a Giants uniform and have to play in New York again, just on the other side. New York media hates him to death, completely, just because he has a large ego that can't be controlled.
Can you blame him for having a large ego?
Yeah,
I can't blame. I mean, he's a Hall of Famer. He He's a Super Bowl winner, one of the best quarterbacks of all time. All these guys have big egos.
I don't know if I would say he's one of the best quarterbacks of all time,
Well,
but
would you not say like a top 10 quarterback is one of the best all time?
Yeah,
I mean,
he's at least
would
top
you
10.
not say that Wilt Chamberlain is one of the best basketball players of all time? I mean,
you're
this
going to
is-
compare Wilt Chamberlain to Aaron Rodgers.
Well, yes, I think I would, because I would argue that I think it's fair to say that Aaron Rodgers all time, not as a Jet, but all time as a quarterback, probably ranks somewhere similar to where Wilt Chamberlain ranks as an NBA player.
I think
probably
Aaron-
not top 5, but certainly top 10.
He has to be, even as a Birds fan, I'll be the first to admit that he has to be top 10 at the very least.
At the very least, I mean, no, he's not as good as say Brady or Mahomes. That's certainly true.
Yeah, it's true.
Or
That's
Montana.
Or yeah, probably not Montana, but
Maybe Manning.
like even if you're going to be like really not charitable, like not give him the benefit of the doubt, you'd have like, okay, Brady, Mahomes, Montana, Elway, Peyton Manning, and then like not too far after that would probably be Aaron Rodgers.
I
Like
mean,
an
I
Elway,
would take so
probably.
many guys over Aaron
But, like,
Rodgers.
There's not that many guys outside of those 5 that I think you can even, and by the way, even some of them you could probably make an argument for Rodgers over. I mean, like certainly not Brady and certainly not Mahomes, but I mean, he's definitely, maybe there's a few more, but I mean, how many other guys would you take over Rodgers in career wise? I mean, very, very few.
I would say he's been a disappointment. I think he should have won a few more
It's
Super Bowls.
ridiculous. First of all, saying his career is a disappointment when he had to go to you have to take into account the full context. He went to junior college. He had to go to junior college. One of his professors laughed at him when he told him that he was going to play in the NFL. He was told his whole life that he wasn't good enough. And then he goes on and becomes one of the great quarterbacks of all time. It's like, how can you argue that career is a disappointment? Because only
his
won one Super Bowl.
expectations were so high.
His expectations were so high because he set them so high. It would be saying that his career is a disappointment. I mean, is Dan Marino's career a disappointment because he didn't win any Super Bowls?
He's an all-time leader in stats.
Jim Kelly didn't win any Super Bowls. Okay, but they didn't win any Super Bowls. Would you rather win a Super Bowl or would you rather win a Super Bowl or like lead stats?
I'm just saying I feel like he could have had a lot more, is my point.
I mean, he could have, but I wouldn't argue that makes it a disappointment. I mean, first of all, people said the same thing about Peyton Manning on the Colts. He could have won more on the Colts. The same thing could, I mean, it's kind of the same thing.
But at least he has multiple rings.
He has 2 compared to Rodgers 1. Is that a drastic difference? Like,
And Peyton Manning's second ring, he really wasn't a catalyst.
he
That
was
team led by defense.
terrible. He was one of the worst. Peyton Manning's second ring. Peyton Manning is one of the worst quarterbacks to ever win a Super Bowl the second time around. People forget that. But legitimately, probably worse than Trent Dilfer in terms of Super Bowl winning quarterbacks.
That's high praise.
And people forget that. Like, first of all, there is not a drastic difference in terms of success between 1 Super Bowl and 2 Super Bowls. It's not like you're comparing him to Brady, who has 7. But like, it's 1 versus 2. I don't really think that proves all that much.
Well, the last thing I'll say on this is apparently Brett Favre is encouraging Aaron Rodgers to play for the Vikings. Also, that's now come out.
That makes the most. I mean, can we get to that?
We're going to do that right now. So apparently that would be following the curse because that's what Brett Favre did. And would be a plug and play move, in my opinion, if he ended up in Minnesota. You have a ready-made wide receiver in Justin Jefferson. You have Aaron Jones. You have plenty of guys. You have a decent defense. That situation is a plug and play scenario for Aaron Rodgers.
The biggest thing is for Rodgers at this point in time is you have to go to a place where there's a good offensive mind. I mean, Kevin O'Connell just won Coach of the Year this past year. If you go to a place like Pittsburgh, I mean, yeah, Mike Tomlin was a very, very good coach. But I look at Mike Tomlin more as a defensive-minded type of coach. And if you go over to the Giants who just have an awful situation with their offensive line, pretty much, uncertain. The Vikings are the most, at least to me, if there's any spot specifically as of right now where they're ready to go to try to win something, it's the Vikings.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. I think he's going to end up in Pittsburgh. That's probably that's where most of it is
pointing at. Good luck, Pittsburgh. You're not winning a Super Bowl with him. I'm just going to throw that out there right now because the guy can't get out of his own way.
I mean, you're talking about Super Bowls with Pittsburgh. They haven't even won a playoff game in 8 years.
No, that's what. But I'm saying I don't think he's going to make the situation any better. Is my point.
I think they're better off sticking with Wilson.
Well, okay. Let's talk about Wilson. So, where in the world is Russell Wilson? So, he was talking to Pittsburgh about coming back. Those have kind of stalled. He now has a meeting. Now, get this, because I thought this was hilarious. He has a meeting with the Cleveland Browns to be their quarterback, and he has a meeting with the New York Giants to be their quarterback. So, I think Russell Wilson is more washed than Aaron Rodgers. To be fair,
No,
I could actually see considering that Wilson hasn't been relevant in a couple of years. So
the guy can't do anything. He was getting sacked nonstop this past season. They kept putting in Justin Fields to replace him.
pretty wild.
And now Justin Fields gets 2 years, $40 million with $30 million guaranteed from the Jets. So Russell Wilson,
And don't get me wrong, I like Fields. I'm probably one of the biggest Fields defenders you'll ever meet, but that is simply the wrong organization for him, simply put.
I mean,
horrible.
Nick said it well when we did the podcast episode. Like, the Jets don't develop quarterbacks to save their lives. They just don't.
So, in fairness to Justin Fields, he was never really in a situation where they would have developed him,
Yeah.
and now
No,
he's going
correct.
to the Jets.
Correct.
That's a very correct statement, Nick.
No,
And-
but I'm talking about generality. Like, they just don't develop quarterbacks.
Yeah, well, that's
No,
the
they
thing.
don't. Nope.
The Jets don't develop quarterbacks because they hire the same. It's run by the same clowns, and they hire the same exact types of head coaches, which is like defensive coordinators who aren't involved in the offense very much and have little head coaching experience. I mean, the only one that didn't exactly fit that description would have been like Adam Gase, who was just a bad head coach, and Rex Ryan, who had experience, but he was like not involved in the offense. So Justin Fields is a young quarterback. It feels like yesterday that he was playing in the national championship at Ohio State, and it's not going to work well.
But also, can I interject? I'm sorry,
Yeah,
a little
go ahead.
bit with Justin Fields. I mean, Ohio State doesn't necessarily develop great quarterbacks either.
No, they don't.
Aside
don't.
from C.J. Stroud, I guess.
Hold up. True. Yes, they don't exactly produce the best NFL quarterbacks. However, they make the most out of them when they're in college. So that does tell you something about Ohio State.
That's different because when you look at programs like Ohio State, Clemson, top college programs, the quarterback has 3 5-star receivers to throw to.
Yeah,
So
that's my point.
then he goes to the guy goes to the first overall pick, and then he's going to a team that has no receivers, no offensive line, and doesn't have the quarterback or the coach to develop him correctly, and then most likely gets his coach fired because he's bad when he's with a bad team.
Well, you also have to remember a lot of times, like the college game, like people we hear about this ad nauseum. The college game is different.
Oh,
I mean,
God.
like
No,
Cardale
it's not.
Jones.
Yes, it is.
It is.
It is different, especially for quarterbacks.
It
I mean,
is.
look, Ohio State quarterbacks, some of them were some of the greatest quarterbacks I've seen in college and have never even had careers in the NFL
Winner
outside
league.
of maybe being a backup. I mean, Cardale Jones was for a length of time one of the best college quarterbacks I've ever seen. And in the NFL,
I
he was
think-
never anything more than a backup.
What about
I think he
the-
was. Yeah, I think not only was he probably one of the best quarterbacks that you've ever seen, he was just one of the best quarterbacks in college football. Period.
Well, wait a
Well,
minute.
For a short period of time, next year he ended up getting benched.
What about one of the most famous busts of all time out of college, Johnny Manziel? I mean, like, the guy just didn't go anywhere whatsoever. He was one of the better college
One of the best college quarterbacks to ever play.
and ended up partying too much and busting his career.
Yeah, in fairness, though, I think like a lot of people saw that coming. Like
I agree with you.
it wasn't really such a shock that ended up happening. And maybe if he didn't party so much, he would have been maybe he would have been more like a Baker Mayfield if he was a bit more disciplined.
Was he the one that ran from the police in that video also?
That was Baker Mayfield.
Or was that Baker Mayfield? By the way, he almost was a bust the way he was heading.
Yeah, well, he was never in a good situation. He played on the and by the way, he ended up taking the Browns to the playoffs a couple of times, which is better than what a lot of people would have expected.
But you know what though? I'm happy for Baker. At least
I am too. He really grew up. Johnny Manziel never really, or maybe Johnny Manziel did grow up, but by the time he did, it was too late.
I mean, he had to go make money somehow, so they did a whole Netflix documentary on how his career was a bust and he was under a lot of pressure and all that nonsense. But
I mean, there was also, there was just so
Good
much
docu-
nonsense with Johnny
Good-
Manziel.
Good documentary, by the way.
I didn't get.
He's almost like the Lilo Brancato of the NFL. Lilo Brancato, he played he played Calogero in A Bronx Tale. Like he was like this rising star.
By the way, if I told you Johnny Manziel was doing a podcast right now, would you believe me?
I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, because everybody has a
Yes.
podcast, especially
Yes.
famous people who have fallen off.
Well, I didn't think he would be disciplined enough to do a podcast. He definitely wasn't disciplined enough to be in the NFL.
How much discipline do you think it takes to do a podcast?
Jason
I'm-
Kelsey's.
He
It
probably
takes
has
a
a whole
lot.
team around him.
No, I'm just saying to actually put the effort in to do it.
Yeah.
Essentially.
You know what? I think he would though, because I think he learned from all his immaturity throughout the years.
Wow, look at this. Apparently, he had Michael Vick on his podcast.
Wow.
Think about two
Michael
guys.
Vick.
That's a whole nother career. Guy who had a really good college football career kind of destroyed his career in the NFL.
But he was actually good in the NFL. That's the
Yes. Well, it was a whole different iteration of quarterback when he entered the league. But to get back on the Russell Wilson front, I don't know if he's going to sign. I don't know if teams are going to want to take a chance. I wouldn't take a chance on him.
with Russell Wilson.
I would stay far away from Russell Wilson if I had the choice between him and other quarterbacks. I would even take Justin Fields over Russell Wilson. I would.
Look, I would be much happier if the Jets signed Russell Wilson instead of Justin Fields.
Russell Wilson can't do shit. Sorry, but that's just my
I'd take
opinion.
him over Justin Fields. I mean, he played most of the year over Justin Fields in Pittsburgh. I mean, look, it's not an ideal situation, but not every team has really all the best choices. Yeah, you have to remember that. Like, not every team has the choice to go out and get like a guy like Stafford or something like that. Not everybody can do that.
No, I get it. And I hope this is not a deterrent for the Jets and other teams to go out and draft a quarterback. Like, I was kind of hoping that the Jets go after Cam Ward, but I guess I can dream on that front a little bit.
First of all, you know what the Jets would have to give up to get him?
Well, they're gonna have to probably give up 2 firsts.
They would have
Probably.
to trade. They would have to trade, and which I don't know. Look, Cam Ward was a great college player. I don't know how good he's going to be in the NFL. It's really hard to say.
It is. I would agree with that.
It's always hard. Like people saying, like a lot of people dismissing him him and Shedeur Sanders as not being good enough to play in the NFL. I think they don't know what they're talking about. But
I would agree with that.
We ultimately don't, and most of the people who say that don't actually watch college football.
That's true. That it is also true.
Like everybody's saying,
they
Shedeur
just watch 5
Sanders-
minutes of tape and then they say whatever.
Yeah. Like a lot of people saying, like a lot of Giant fans are saying Shedeur Sanders is going to be a bust. It's like most Giant fans don't watch college football. All the people saying that, most of the people saying that probably have not watched Shedeur Sanders in college.
By the way, do you see his draft stock is reportedly falling by the day?
Doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, well, I think the problem with him is his dad.
Yeah, that's the big problem. I would
That's
say
the biggest problem because he's going to be like a LeVar Ball dad.
Oh God,
And that's the last thing the Giants want, especially a franchise like the Giants.
I could just
That's a bit
picture it
more old
now.
school.
I can picture it now. Undefeated, never lost. I could just hear it. I could just see that happen.
Oh, my
Of
God.
course, did you see what Ryan Clark said about why his draft stock dropped?
That was
No.
absolutely ridiculous.
Oh, you saw it, Anthony?
I
Yeah.
didn't see it.
Anthony, you want to enlighten?
Ryan Clark is not really much on my radar.
No, I don't like him either. But do you
Well,
want
I
to?
know it's it's a subject that we try to, stay away from and not talk too much on the show.
I have
but,
a good idea of what it was.
He was basically saying that the reason why Shedeur Sanders was dropped in the draft was because the stereotype they have against African-American quarterbacks. But the thing is, Cam Ward is also African-American. He's not dropping in the draft.
Yeah.
So why does one apply to Shedeur Sanders and not to Cam Ward? And I'm pretty sure that's not the reason why Shedeur Sanders is dropping in the draft is because of the color of his skin.
I think people are just done with the ego and attitude of Shedeur Sanders being overly confident. I think that's
Shedeur Sanders as an individual, and not all of it is his fault, in fairness. A lot of it is just his dad. And also just the fact that, like, when you're a celebrity's kid, there's I think it shapes you a bit differently as opposed to like normal people.
But let me run the other thing by you. Did you hear the ridiculous statement he made saying that he's a better two-way player than Shohei Ohtani?
Oh, that was Travis Hunter.
Oh, was that Travis Hunter?
No. It was about that. Travis Hunter said that about himself.
Oh,
Yeah,
I
he
thought that
did.
was Shedeur. Oh,
No.
It's
Travis
Travis
Hunter
Hunter.
and Shohei Ohtani are very comparable because they're both two-way players. That's the point.
That's why, because Travis Hunter, as Nick, you just said, plays both ways as a wide receiver. And
It's
a
not
corner-
even
and a corner
close.
safety hybrid.
It's not even close.
I think first of all, I don't blame Travis Hunter for thinking that about himself. I think it's a good thing that he has that type of confidence. However, I also think he's wrong. I think the Shohei Ohtani thing is more impressive. And the biggest reason I say it's more impressive is that Travis Hunter did it at the college level. Do it at the pro level. And
That's
then
my
you can
point.
do it at the pro level. Like if Travis Hunter, here's the thing. If Travis Hunter can play wide receiver and corner the way he did in college in the pros, then I would say, okay, that might be more impressive because you're playing almost every snap, but he's not going to be able to do it to that degree in the NFL. It's physically just going to take such a toll on him.
And,
Yeah.
and also, Nick, too, I think
Not
Joe
only that,
Platt
but-
said it perfectly. In baseball, hitting a baseball and pitching are two completely different skill sets. I mean, when you look at Travis Hunter, some of the stuff he does at receiver and corner kind of translate together. So I think what Ohtani does is much more impressive because what you train to do as a hitter is completely opposite what you're going to do as a pitcher.
And not only that, but to some extent, we've seen that with football players, like not to the degree that Travis Hunter did at Colorado, but like his head coach, Deion Sanders, he was a corner, but he often played wide receiver sometimes. And so we've seen some of that as opposed to with Shohei Ohtani, we haven't seen a pitcher who can hit since Babe Ruth. We haven't seen it in like 100 years. And pitchers are notorious for not being able to hit the ball at all to the point where the NL ended up implementing the DH. So I just don't think it's the same.
Well, because it was just bad for baseball to see pitchers strike out nonstop.
Exactly. That was the whole point. Whereas corners, and not only that, but it's just like, even though most corners and most wide receivers play on one side, I certainly do think that a lot of corners, maybe not so much the other way around, but I think that if you were to put a lot of cornerbacks at wide receiver, many of them would be able to do it. Not so much the other way around, but if you were to just take some random corner, a whole bunch of them could just play wide receiver.
That's a good point. Some other news that kind of just broke currently as we were talking about that. The Raiders have released Gardner Minshew.
Yeah.
Does anyone care?
No.
Not
No.
really.
Not really. I mean, I think
Geno
it's
Smith, the
Gardner
guy.
Minshew going to another team. I got a chance to interview Gardner Minshew when he was on the Eagles, and he was just a very nonchalant person. He just kept to himself, and I mean, I think he's just one of those. I think he's just one of those guys where it's kind of like and it's not his fault. It's just the way his career has gone. He's almost like a follow the leader approach, and he just kind of goes where he needs to go and does his services, and then he's done, and he moves on to the next team.
He's a career backup, essentially.
It is. He reminds me a ton of a Gus Frerotte, for example, or even a McCown or something. So
Also, some other news just breaking as well. The Cowboys just losing pieces again. They lost Rico Dowdle, who's signing with the Panthers.
Who?
Oh,
He's
running back.
he's a running back for the Cowboys.
Oh, okay.
He had a thousand.
Oh, wow.
He was 1,000-yard rusher for the Cowboys last year.
To be honest with you, haven't watched much Dallas Cowboys this past season.
I don't play.
I when I read that tweet, I thought it said the Patriots. I'm glad you said
Panthers. Yeah.
there's
Now, Cowboys brought in Javonte Williams, right, from the Broncos, so he's probably
Yes.
going to be the starter.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah. But I thought Dowdle was a really good running back. I'm surprised they gave up on him, considering he was a 1,000-yard rusher. I mean,
because it's because of the Cowboys organization. You know, they moved on from him and DeMarcus Lawrence early to Seattle, and Lawrence was by far the best defender besides Micah Parsons for sure last year.
it just goes to show Jerry just doesn't give a shit about the organization whatsoever. It's just like, hey, about them Cowboys. I'm going to do what I want. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that.
Yeah,
And
the last coach that actually cared about the team, and I can't believe that his tenure was so short, but the last coach that cared was Jimmy Johnson. Honestly,
wow. That's
I would argue the same. I really would.
And I think McCarthy got the raw end of the stick, if you ask me to. I think they should have brought him back and given him another chance.
I mean,
But-
why would you literally
He
go
wasn't that
from?
discussed, to be fair.
Why would you go from a Super Bowl winning coach that has a great record with wins and losses to a, well, I can't say, to his offensive coordinator? I mean, that you promote from within when you could have probably tried to find a better option, but didn't look well enough.
I guess, but I don't know. The Cowboys are a dumpster, just in every way, shape, or form. And I don't see them improving. Even though they did restructure CeeDee Lamb's and Dak Prescott's contract to get them $70 million in cap space. But let's move over to some other news. This is not a shock, but it was officially confirmed, I think about, like an hour ago-ish?
That's the new league year time before.
Yeah. So Cooper Kupp was officially released by the Rams. Now, I thought this was funny. I talked to Anthony and to Nick D about this, saying that the Rams were looking to get younger at the wide receiver position.
And they got older.
And what do they
Yeah,
do?
got older.
They go out and they sign Devontae Adams, who's, 2 years older than Cooper Kupp?
Yeah, he's old.
Mhm.
And what's funny is he doesn't have to go that far because he has experience playing for the Raiders too. So that's kind of weird.
So
he gets to
If
stay on the West
you're
Coast.
gonna get the
Well, he was on the Jets.
Well,
why
yeah,
not
true,
just
true.
come back?
He
If you're
gets,
just gonna set
he
the
gets
ball.
to go back.
I mean, I saw the tweet from Cooper Kupp. I just want to pull that up. Really. All right. 8 years of incredible memories. We talked often about the Rams being back in LA and how we would grow to be something special here. There was frustration early on around getting the buy-in from people in LA, but we knew at the end of the day, it's about providing moments, shared experiences, the things that parents and their children will talk about and remember forever. This is what makes the ending of these last 8 years so difficult. It's the ending of something we've enjoyed building with you. Thank you for these shared moments. Thank you, LA, for welcoming my family with open arms and allowing us to grow here. Next chapter starts now. Best is yet to come. So I think that was him being a little politically correct, number one.
Also being a little hopeful. I mean, like he was at a pretty, I mean, I don't know where he's going to go, but he was in a pretty good situation with the Rams. There's a really good chance that the best is not yet to come. I feel like those are like the famous last words.
where you're basically trying to hope and pray you get to it.
It doesn't always work that way.
Well,
Well,
Go ahead.
him, it's going to come down to two things, right? He could come to my Patriots, which I obviously love, but that's obviously just gonna be
He's
all
not going to
mine.
love that. Do you think he's going to want to go from the Rams to the Go ahead, continue.
well,
you think he
the
wants to go
reason-
from Matt Stafford to Drake May?
Well, listen, like, because he already won his reign, right? Does he want to go specifically and get paid probably more specifically to be like your number one? Or does he want to go to somewhere specific as contender in which he can kind of be like a complimentary type of piece, but might not get the amount of targets or reps that potentially he might want to get? That's really just kind of what I'm kind of looking at. If he wants to, have a number one type of, be like a number one type of guy, I mean, the Pats are definitely an option. I could definitely see a team, I was thinking a team like the what was it, Seattle? But Seattle,
Oh,
I mean,
Seattle. Yuck.
they got Nick Jigba over there, so I mean, I could definitely make an argument at this point in time that Nick Jigba could be that. The Packers, I think, are a really good option for him as well.
I was
they
going to say that.
Yeah.
They have a lot of young pieces, but I think Cup can definitely kind of join a team like that for sure.
I have another one for you. How about the Ravens?
The Ravens, well, they got Zay Flowers and they got DeAndre Hopkins. I mean, that would be kind of one specifically in which he would just want to join a contender and definitely not get as many targets. So that's kind of the situation is, does he want to go to a younger type of team but be the number one option, or does he want to get paid and go somewhere specifically just be a contender type of team when he's already won a championship?
Or as Anthony would say, Baltimore is an embarrassment of riches. Just saying.
And a sleeper type of team I could also see is the Indianapolis Colts. The Colts really struggle kind of at the receiving position. And, you put him with Michael Pittman, I could definitely see something like that there.
You trust that situation, though?
I don't, but I just think that he's going to have a pretty good-sized market. I mean, this is Cooper Kupp we're talking about here. I still think that he's still a lot of good football left in him.
His injuries are a massive issue, though.
Yeah, I mean, I understand that. But, I mean, the guy hasn't also completely fallen off either.
I agree with you. I don't know if the market is as big for Cooper Kupp as he claims that there's going to be plenty of opportunity out there. That's the question I have.
I see probably like 4 to 5 teams probably involved.
But I think you mentioned a bunch of teams. I think Baltimore would be one. Green Bay would definitely be one because their wide receiver room is a mess.
I was going to say Houston, but Houston, I mean, they'll probably lose Diggs. I mean, I guess you can join a team maybe like Houston, but
I mean, I'll throw in.
They're down Dell for a year because of his.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah, that too. Yeah, so that makes even more of a potential argument. Maybe you got Kupp for like a year with Houston.
I'll throw another team out there since we have a fan of them sitting in here. The Bills maybe is a possible place. I'm not saying that's perfect, but that would definitely give you another wide receiver option, Anthony, to play with.
It would also be better for Cooper Kupp too.
Khalil Shakir takes a lot of those slot plays at the receiver position. And we also brought in Josh Palmer. We got Keon Coleman. So I'm not sure if, Cooper Kupp would be a fit. Honestly, I know that they weren't a great team. I like Ben's team. I think he should go to the New England Patriots. I mean, you look at the moves that the New England Patriots make. I think they're going to be the second best team in the AFC East next year.
Mm.
Yeah, but they've only made like contributing signings on defense for me, in my personal opinion, and I kind of think that that's a bad thing when you have a guy like Drake May, in his second year.
They're a younger team, so they're building from within a lot.
Our defense also wasn't great last year, to be fair, either. I mean, I felt that we were giving up a ton on the ground. We got that with Milton Williams, as we have to overpay with him. Getting Harold Landry, I think, was a really underrated move. Of course, he can reunite, that Boston College effect. And they also got a defensive tackle from Arizona. I forgot the guy's name. I heard really good things about. So we got some depth pieces there. We did lose Jonathan Jones to the Commanders today. So definitely maybe some in the corner. And then, of course, Carlton Davis. Carlton Davis, I think, is one of the most underrated moves, I think. I mean, that's not because he wants on the Pats, but I think just Jamar Chase, they asked him specifically, what was the toughest corner that you had to go against? And he said Carlton Davis. So that speaks volumes. And he played a really good defense with the Lions, too, Carlton Davis. So you put him with Gonza. So, Anthony, you're right. I mean, I think Drake May needs that number one option because
Bennett. I don't mean to interrupt you, but it's Kyrus Tonga who you're thinking of.
Thank you, Tonga. Yeah, that was a guy that they got as well. So I don't think we're also. I mean, Grant, you were mentioning, they're going on all defense. The Pats still have so much more cap space left. I mean, they could go balls to wall.
I'm just saying they're losing out on the top tier offensive talent. That's
I
all.
agree with you on that.
Well,
but we'll see.
And Ben's right. Like I think they had a record amount of cap space. I think they were like $100 million in cap space at one point.
75, something like that.
It was an insane amount of cap space. So they better go out and spend or they're screwed otherwise.
And I think Cooper Kupp would be a good safety valve for a guy like Drake May. And I think Drake May has showed the talent. He's got the arm strength. If he could just put it all together, I really think he could be a great quarterback. And if he can make that next step, now that the Patriots brought in some defensive players, I mean, you look at Cooper Kupp, he could probably get the most money from the Patriots, and he's probably going to get the most playing time and the most targets playing for the Patriots.
So Chris Godwin, I know that we haven't talked about Chris Godwin, but the Patriots apparently offered double the amount to Chris Godwin for the contract, but he went back to Tampa, which I can understand about. But that's pretty much how the Patriots are trying to go. They're trying to get specifically a guy, whether a guy like Cooper Kupp or somebody else. So They're definitely not done specifically when they're trying to find a receiver.
They said that was strictly staying home. That move, essentially, like he could have taken way more money to go to New England, but he wanted to stay in Tampa. That's
It's fun. I mean, listen, I 100% I'm fine with that. I would love Godwin, but him already with Tampa, it's a really good situation there. Like
I like the warm weather better too.
that too.
I hate that people like determine where they're going to play based on weather. I just think that's stupid.
Well,
Like,
I
they
think
were
it always
talking
is
about-
going to play a factor.
Yeah, I agree with Nick. I mean, Nick was also
Especially when you
mentioning
get like used to that weather. Like Florida weather is so much better than New England weather. It's like not even close.
Yeah, but look at Tampa and look at Miami. When's the last time they won a Super Bowl?
I think that warm weather
Well,
team.
let me take that back. The Bucs
you think
won.
the Patriots are going to win a Super Bowl anytime soon?
I mean, you never know, but
I mean, they're no closer than Tampa. I mean, Tampa's been a better team than the Patriots have been.
that's true.
yeah.
Okay then.
But I'm
That's
just
what matters.
saying, I think people take weather too much into account when they say, "Oh, I went here for the weather." No, you didn't. You went there because they paid you. Like, let's
No,
just,
I think that weather plays some type of factor. Like,
It
I
does.
don't think it's ever the only thing, but it plays a factor.
I
Don't
mean, do
forget
it,
no state tax in Florida too.
That too.
that, right?
State
But
tax.
Yeah,
do I
there's
have
a-
to go back
that's
to
a
the
tax
NFL?
that-
Do I have to go? Do I have to go back to the NFLPA report cards? Basically, that Miami got all A+ grades, but they just don't win ever.
Yeah.
I mean, I just want to point that out. And most people said they love it because of the weather, because of the nightclub atmosphere, and all
And
that
there's
stuff.
no
Oh my
state
god! Of course they do.
But they don't win shit. They just don't, and they never will. Especially with Tua being a quarterback.
Yeah, especially with him. I mean, they signed Zach Wilson for a backup role, and I actually can legitimately see him getting playing time because of the fact that Tua Tagovailoa is literally one hit away from ending his career.
And if you're not careful, he might see ghosts. Just saying.
That was Sam Darnold.
Ah, shoot. Okay, see, now I'm confusing my crappy Jet quarterbacks now.
By the way,
talk-
what is it with these Jets quarterbacks? What is it with this Jets to Dolphins pipeline?
You're right. Who is the
Mike White did the same
Yes.
thing. Ended up going to the Dolphins.
That's what I
Or
was
in
thinking. Of.
Adam Gase's case, Dolphins to Jets pipeline.
Oh, God. Well, since you brought him up, let's talk about it. So, Sam Darnold to the Seahawks, Geno Smith traded to the Raiders. This was like a Twilight Zone a little bit here, like because these moves basically were coinciding together. I think the Seahawks were drunk when they decided to overpay Sam Darnold 3 years, $110 million, and 55 guaranteed.
3
I
years,
mean-
100 million.
What?
I think it's 3 years, 100 million.
I said 3 years. I think it was 3 years, 110 when I last confirmed it. But
Hang on, I can confirm it.
I'm pretty sure it's 100.5 million.
I saw different reports on the contract, but oh, you're right. Okay, it's 3 years, 100.5 million with 55
100.5,
guaranteed.
yeah, it's
This is an
100.5.
oddly specific number.
You're probably right. It's still more than half, which is insane. But I don't know what Sam Darnold is thinking, considering that DK Metcalf was traded to Pittsburgh, Tyler Lockett,
I'm gonna
released-
go into that in a minute,
but
but continue. Sorry.
Seattle is dysfunctional. Like, and you go and you sign there, and first of all, I think Seattle was up against its own offer. I don't think anyone was in the same ballpark to sign Sam Darnold. I don't even think Minnesota was in the same ballpark to re-sign him.
Absolutely not.
They
No.
could have franchise tagged him, which they didn't do.
Which I am very adamant that the Vikings not franchise tagging Sam Darnold was stupid. They absolutely should have franchise tagged him, but also it leads me to believe that maybe they're looking to go after Aaron Rodgers.
Maybe
So you want to go into the season with JJ McCarthy, who is basically a wild card. We don't know what we're going to get from him. At least Sam Darnold, you have some idea, and he had a great season. Objectively, he had a great season with the Vikings, and you really can't take that away from him.
No,
And-
and I agree with you totally that he was up there as one of the top 3 best quarterbacks in the
The
NFL.
thing with the Vikings is that they are so quick to dump quarterbacks.
It's
And
true.
sometimes it works for them, and sometimes it doesn't. In this case, I don't think it's going to work for them. I mean, Sam Darnold was their best case scenario. It's a franchise tag. So you franchise tag him for franchise tag is only one season. And he's still young.
And he also works really
35
well.
years old. He's still young.
Well, technically, they could get him for 2 years. They could have franchised him back-to-back years and gotten 2 years out of him.
Yeah,
but
exactly. So it's like, to me, this was such a dumb move by the Vikings. But if they're going to do this, the best thing to do is to go out and get Rodgers. That would be the best case scenario, and which leads me to believe that that's what they might do. But in terms of this move by the Seahawks, I think it's a really good move for the Seahawks and not a really good move for Darnold.
agreed.
It's not a good, because Darnold is now in a much worse. He's going to be in a really tough division. In fairness, he was in a tough division with the Vikings too. But the NFC North is much more of a wild card type of division. Like, we don't know. Like, the whole thing is kind of up in the air, especially between the Vikings, the Lions, and the Packers. Whereas, like, the Seahawks are much more behind the 8 ball. And I think that the only thing that could happen for the Seahawks that would be good would be a bunch of injuries to the Niners and the Rams, which have happened a lot. So unless there are severe injuries to the Rams and to the Niners, the Seahawks are really, really behind the 8 ball. And there's a really good chance the Cardinals are going to give them a run for their money. And so for Darnold, it's not a great – it's really just from his point of view, he certainly took a step back. For the Seahawks, however, this is a really good move. It's a really good move for Seattle. Now, they did lose all their weapons, but I think this is clearly an upgrade at quarterback over Geno Smith. And they signed him for really what was a pretty good deal. They signed him for 3 years, $100.5 million. They signed him for just slightly more money than the Steelers signed DK Metcalf. Like, that's a wide receiver. So this is actually a pretty good move for Seattle. Even though they've lost a lot of their weapons, this is clearly an upgrade at quarterback. All else being equal, I'd rather have Sam Darnold over Geno Smith.
I'm curious what the rest of the room has to say, not about this, because this one does not surprise it. The second half of this banner, Geno Smith being traded to the Raiders. So the report was that Geno Smith wanted like $40 to $45 million a year for 2 years each, which, by the way, is insane. Geno Smith is not worth, in my opinion, half of that. In my opinion, has he scrapped and figured out and won games? Yes, but he will never be a $40 to $45 million a year quarterback. And I just thought it was hilarious. Like, they said he was not willing to budge or move. He said as soon as the Seahawks rejected his deal, he instantly requested a trade. And you know what they basically said? All right, screw you. We'll send you to Vegas. You get lost down in Vegas. I mean, I don't know. What does the rest of the room think about Geno Smith being traded to the Raiders? Does that do anything for them at all whatsoever?
Nope. I don't think it's an upgrade at all.
Well,
Geno Smith just, to me, has never really come into his own in the way that everybody thought he was going to. And it's just the Raiders making another mistake by trying to do the second chance thing they've done for years. That, you know, it's really only ever worked with a couple of quarterbacks in their franchise history, and the times that it's worked, it's resulted in Super Bowls and years of success. But to me, they needed to start over. They needed to go big. They needed to either make a move in the draft, but spending money to get Geno Smith in the quarterback market, to me, was very fruitful, if you will. I think this was easily the wrong decision, and one that I think they will come to regret by midseason later this fall.
Ben, what do you think?
I think the Geno to the Raiders was kind of desperate. I don't know. It was just me. I think personally, Russell Wilson should have went to the Raiders to reunite with Pete Carroll. I think that would have been amazing. I think that was right
there. It was right there, and they didn't do it.
Yeah, I think there would have been a lot more of obviously they of course play with each other. That's obviously one thing. And I just think that just the environment, I think Russ would really feed well with a place like Vegas. So I think with Geno, I mean, yeah, I think he's a really good bridge type of quarterback. I don't think you're going to win, a Super Bowl with him, but I think the money that he was looking for, and then going to a specific place that's going to pay like that, I just think that it just adds specifically just the idiocy of an organization, which is funny enough, a very idiotic organization. the Raiders really botched the ball on this one. I agree with Nick in terms of the fit with the Seahawks. I think that the Seahawks are kind of a younger team. And I think offensively, you bring a younger quarterback in like Sam Darnold, to come into your organization. He stays in the NFC, so he has a pretty good familiarity in terms of a lot of teams that he's going to be playing this year. So obviously I think that as well in the draft, you could probably be able to get somebody with Jackson Smith-Njigba, a lot of really good receivers in the class this year. So, I mean, I think that you look at the NFC with the Niners, I think that they lost a lot so far in this offseason. The Cardinals, I think, added some, pieces there, but I don't know. I think that, Darnold to Seattle, I think, is a lot better of a fit, for sure, at least in my mind, than Geno over to the Raiders.
That's interesting. I don't know. It's one of those things that made me scratch my head. Like, I thought Sam Darnold was going to go to a place where he could actually like take over, kind of like in a partially experienced role somewhere. But as Nick, you said that maybe there was no spot really for him to go.
Yeah, I really think that those last 2 games that he played, that 2-game stretch, costed him a lot of money. Like, I think I pointed this out. I think that it may have costed him more money than when the sexual harassment case against Louis C.K. came out.
Yeah.
I think that costed Sam Darnold more money than it costed Louis C.K. Like, that's how bad it was, that 2-game stretge.
I mean, they said the same thing about Geno. They said the way he played his last 2 games, like, it costed him, like, another $100 million, they were saying.
Yeah.
Possibly.
Yeah, like, it costed Sam Darnold a lot of money, and if not for that, the Vikings probably would have franchise tagged him, which, like I said, foolishly they didn't franchise tag him. It was a stupid move. And as far as, like, this trade goes with Geno Smith and the Raiders, I think it's precisely the reverse to the Sam Darnold one, which is that it's good for Geno Smith but bad for the Raiders. Like, this had to have been, like, one of the worst-case scenarios for them. Like, they would be like, oh, worst-case scenario, we get Geno Smith. Now, it is an upgrade over what they had last year. I think Geno Smith is an upgrade over Aiden O'Connell.
That's not saying.
That's not saying a whole lot.
But it is, though, because that's who their quarterback was last year. So I think that it's somewhat of an upgrade, but it's good for Geno Smith. But, I mean, yeah, you would think they would go after Russell Wilson and maybe he'd reunite with Pete Carroll. And Pete Carroll got the most out of Russell Wilson, as we all know.
Pete Carroll also got the most out of Geno Smith. I mean, you look at a guy like Pete Carroll, he knows both those guys well. He had his choice, and he must have been a lot more confident in trading for Geno Smith than he had for signing Russell Wilson. At the end of the day, neither of those guys are going to get this team to the promised land. This team has so many holes. Me and Nick Morgan were talking about this team literally has 2 great players, and that's it. Brock Bowers and Max Crosby. They pretty much have a positional need at every other position other than that. So this team has a lot. They're not going to be able to compete in that division with the Broncos, the Chargers, and the Chiefs. They're still going to be the bottom of that division next year, even with Geno Smith. Yes, it is an upgrade, but how much further are they going to get with Geno Smith? They probably should have maybe went with a younger guy, or maybe even try to, have one bad season and draft your quarterback in 2026. But, with the Max Crosby signing, it seems like Pete Carroll's going to try to compete now, but I don't know how much you can compete with that roster.
I mean, you also went through all the headache to extend Max Crosby's contract down in Vegas also after he had 2 years left. You extend him to 5 years, and it was like close to 150 million almost. I mean, was that really worth it considering you guys are the Raiders are not competing anytime soon to win a Super Bowl?
Well, he's definitely by far the biggest cornerstone piece. I mean,
no. I'm not debating that. He is. But I'm saying, is that contract make any sense considering that they're not going to win anytime soon?
Probably not, but I mean,
Probably
in terms
not.
of the player, he deserves the bag.
I mean, you can say the same thing, and I guess I'll just bring it up because we're talking about the Myles Garrett situation in Cleveland. I mean, most guaranteed money for a non-quarterback. I mean, what was it? It was like $123.5 million guaranteed.
Yeah, and then he had another 2 years on the contract that he's currently on, I think, something like that. So
yeah,
he was making like $200 million or something like that.
They said he's making $40 million plus a year. At that position, that's unheard of.
Yeah.
Yeah, and now
think
that drives up money for other positions because
I could think of one, Micah Parsons.
I'm not even talking. Well, yes, it does, but I'm not even talking about just the edge rusher position. I'm talking about like guys like Jamar Chase, T. Higgins. Like non-quarterback. Because Myles Garrett is making quarterback type money as a non-quarterback, and and I actually kind of want to touch on both of these for me. I'm sorry, but so Geno Smith to the Raiders for me makes sense because he did go with or he was with Pete Carroll the last couple of years of Pete Carroll's tenure as the head coach of the Seattle Seahawks. So I get it. I just don't know if it's smart for the Raiders to lock him in for $40 to $45 million, what he's asking for, but they're talking about it. Apparently they're in extension talks. And Sam Darnold to the Seahawks, for me, I like his contract. I just don't like that he chose the Seahawks because you look at his weapons now, right? He goes from having Justin Jefferson, the greatest wide receiver in NFL right now, and Jordan Addison, and whatever other weapons they had in Minnesota, in T.J. Hawkinson and whoever else was there.
I mean, you had Aaron Jones. You had a decent running back there too.
Now you go to an organization that traded away their top receiver and let go of their possession catch receiver in DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. So I am very worried that this could be another Sam Darnold and the Jets situation. Like they're not trying to get him weapons so he could turn back to his old Jet form. Now, I will admit the Seahawks are a much better ran franchise than the Jets, but they're not prioritizing the quarterback as they should be. And also another thing, Sam Darnold goes from a great offensive coach to probably a middle tier defensive coach. We haven't seen enough out of Mike McDonald. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yet, because this is only his second year as head coach, right? This is he'll be going into his third year, so we'll see. But I don't know how I don't know if the Seahawks were the best move for Sam Darnold.
No, that's a good point. But we'll see how this one plays out. I mean, it's an interesting scenario. If Sam Darnold could somehow turn this into something, maybe they compete. But I don't know. Anthony, give me your thoughts on this because this was interesting.
Yeah, I was definitely shocked, especially since they just signed Michael Hyatt the day before. But when I looked at it, it does make sense. I mean, Joey Bosa, when healthy, is a great sack artist. He just can't stay healthy. I think in Buffalo, he doesn't have to be a full-time starter. I think he could be brought in and be used as a rotational piece. And they brought in Michael Hyatt, who's a lot better against the run. So I think they're going to use Hyatt, on run situations on the early first and second down and have Joey Bosa kind of be like that designated pass rusher, kind of like how they used Von Miller too. So I think he's going to come in, take Von Miller's spot. You already got Gregory Rousseau. You got AJ Espinosa. So I think it's a great addition to that rotation that the Bills have now.
Yeah, I mean, the Bills are doing everything in their power to win. Like when you spend, what was the number I told you? Like $515 million so far this offseason, including a new contract for Josh Allen, which is like lottery money, if you ask me, for what was it, 6 years, $330 million with $250 million guaranteed, the highest guaranteed money in NFL history. I mean, you can't wish for anything else as a Bills fan right now, right?
Yeah, and I mean, they like I said, they got their deep threat. They got Josh Palmer, who I think is going to be a tremendous addition. They re-signed Damar Hamlin. They're going to probably spend a lot of their draft picks on defensive players. They were able to trade Kamar Elam, who was kind of a bust. They were able to get a couple draft picks back. They were able to save some cap space. And the reason why they did the Josh Allen thing now is because Josh Allen basically turned his 4-year contract into a 6-year contract and gave them some salary cap space this year and next year.
That's a good point. I mean, the Bills need to win. Like they have to win. They got to find a way with all these moves. Well, Baltimore, I guess you could say Baltimore and Buffalo really need to make a move and win a Super Bowl because of all the embarrassment of riches, more on the Baltimore side than Buffalo. Because I just think Buffalo does better with less than any team in the NFL. I feel like, including the injuries that they had all of last year. So I think this is a good move. This helps bolster their roster, and we just see where it goes from there. And then there was another move that happened. Darius Slay, who was just released from the Eagles. And the Eagles are doing something unique in this offseason where they're moving away from some guys, but they're signing a lot of strategic moves. They released Darius Slay. He goes on a temper tantrum because he gets released by the Eagles and basically says that Jalen Hurts is not a top 5 quarterback right now. And what do we think about this move of him to the Steelers? Good, bad, indifferent? What do we think?
I'd say indifferent. I mean, I do feel like Pittsburgh does kind of struggle with cornerbacks. I mean, they do have Joey Porter Jr., but they have a really good backside with their safeties, I feel, with Fitzpatrick and forgot who else is over there that safety position. But they have a really good defense specifically. I don't think that Slay has to be their overall piece specifically, to be the guy. He can just kind of come in and just, obviously for a fact Tomlin's going to always get the best out of the defenses every single year. So, I mean, I really can see this fit. And they don't have to pay a lot for him as much either, really kind of given his overall age.
Yeah, it was only 1 year, $10 million, which I think is a pretty good deal for the Steelers. You also have to remember, that's a good deal, and they're not locking in they're not they're not committing to him for a long time. And you also have to remember, good corners are really like a dime a dozen. You don't get them a lot in the NFL. I mean, it's one of the rarest things. Very few teams actually have one good corner, let alone 2 good corners. So I think it's a pretty. Only the Jets have a bunch of good corners and don't have good anything else.
That's a good point.
The Steelers, yeah, I think it's a smart move.
Anybody else have an opinion on this move or no?
It's kind of indifferent for me because, I mean, how old is Darius Slay? 36.
34.
He's up there.
He's kind of old for a corner, but he's not that old.
I mean, he's got probably 1 or 2 years left.
Yeah, Darius Slay's 34.
It's kind of like Cooper Kupp on defense, if you look at it. Kind of giving kind of that.
I mean,
but the quarterback shelf life is certainly lower than slot receivers.
Yeah, how many 30-year-old corners are in the NFL? You don't see corners past 30 in the NFL all that often.
Oh, you do, but they start to lose a step after 30. I would say. I mean, I would say the shelf life for corners is roughly like the life expectancy from thousands of years ago, somewhere in the 30s, 30, 35.
It's an interesting point. I don't know. We'll see if this move works out. Pittsburgh is making a lot of moves, bringing in a lot of pieces. DK Metcalf, Darius Slay, possibly Aaron Rodgers. Pray that he doesn't destroy your organization. But I don't know. We'll see how Pittsburgh goes. We have about
one more thing on that. I've seen tons of people, and it's just fans. I haven't seen insiders.
What?
Said, who are you, Johnny? The phone ringing in the middle of the show.
That was Pittsburgh saying, "Stop going after us."
That would have been fine.
Okay, go ahead, Zan.
So I was just saying, I haven't seen insiders say this or beat reporters, but I've seen tons of Steelers fans say that they will legitimately boycott their Steelers fandom if Rodgers goes to Pittsburgh. They won't be Steelers fans anymore.
You know what?
as well. That's dumb. Number one.
I
would
think
be-
I think it's funny as hell. But
No, I agree that it's funny. First of all, if you're a fan, you're a fan. You can't trade your fan card. I'm tired of people who think like they can just trade their fan card and say,
Bandwagon.
I hate my team. I'm going to root for this one. No. You're a fan. You're a fan. Ask Nick Dia and myself. We've been miserable Jet fans forever. Ever.
Yeah, I never. In fairness, Zan, I think Zan spends a lot of time in the dark corners of the internet and sees a lot of obscure things. So I don't know how accurate that really is.
Hey,
That's
so do I. What the hell?
No, you're right. I mean, well,
Maybe you both do, but Zan certainly does. From the shows I've done with him, he has to point out these obscure takes from these like Twitter heads. I don't know how many people are really saying that. If you dig deep,
I
enough,
actually have heard people say that.
if
Actually,
you dig deep enough on social media, you can find just about anything. You can find somebody who says tomatoes cause cancer. Like it wouldn't be that difficult.
it's true. You can literally find anything you want.
you could literally you could just make up a rumor and make it part of Google search, and you could say it was said. I mean, you seriously could. All right, we have about 20 minutes left. We're gonna do our version of Around the NFL here. I'm gonna go to everybody's fandoms who's sitting in here, and we're gonna talk about our teams. Even though I think for Nick and I, that's a therapy session more than talking about our teams.
You think I want to talk about our team? My God.
But let's go to Ben because we haven't heard anything as much about the Patriots, more on the inside, who, again, big cap, a lot of money to spend, quarterback situation, which they're trying to improve on with Drake May, trying to get him better. So what's going on in Pattsville over there?
Okay, so obviously the Patriots have been fairly active. Of course, Grant was mentioned on the defensive side, which of course was needed. But our additions, and I've kind of already talked about a couple of them, Harold Landry and Austin Hooper were day one additions to the team. Hooper obviously was somebody that Drake May did have a pretty good rapport with last year. Under Alex Van Pelt, who unfortunately is going to be not with us this upcoming season, but you have him and Hunter Henry both basically together as a tight end duo, and I could live pretty safe with that. Hooper had 3 touchdowns last year, including one of the games that I was at, frankly enough. And he's just a really good overall player. He's not going to obviously be a flash type of guy, but really good player. Harold Landry, that connection with Mike Vrabel already with him playing over in Tennessee. You got him a 3-year, $43.5 million deal. It feels like a lot, but he just had 9 sacks last year. So, I mean, he is still playing at a really, really good high level. So I do like the Landry move a lot. And he also played with new defensive coordinator Terrell Williams, who was really, really highly sought from last year with the Lions. They also added Robert Spillane, a linebacker, to a 3-year, $37 million deal. Spillane came over from the Vegas Raiders, and apparently Raider fans absolutely loved him. He's an attacker type, specifically at the linebacking position. And, you put him with Juwan Bentley. Our linebackers really struggled last year against the run. So I do think that's going to be a very underrated move for the Pats. And like I mentioned again already, they got Carlton Davis. They really needed a guy opposite of Christian Gonzalez for a long period of time. They got Davis to a 3-year, $60 million type of deal. It contains $34.5 million fully guaranteed, according to Schefter. Davis is going to be a really good overall move. And, he obviously did really, really well last year, including a 2-interception game. If you guys remember the Jared Goff, no, it wasn't the Jared Goff game. It was the Lions game against the Texans where Goff threw the 5 interceptions. Davis had 2 of the interceptions against CJ Stroud. So he has a really, really good overall mold specifically. And he also played with Terrell Williams. Of course, there's been a ton of connections that the Patriots added some players with the Vrabel connection, McDaniels connection, and the Terrell Williams connection. So I definitely see the reasons why. We did get a former Jet, Morgan Moses, offensive lineman. If you guys want to mention about him, I've heard very mixed reviews about him, but the Pats did have to get some offensive tackle help. They got him to a 3-year, $24 million contract. So, it's what it is for that. They got Milton Williams, who I think is the biggest splash they've gotten out of all the type of players. Williams obviously had 2 big sacks in the Super Bowl against Patrick Mahomes, including a strip sack. I'm going to love this move, I think, a lot out of, I think, if any move. And then they got Joshua Dobbs. Dobbs is obviously going to be the backup to Drake May. So obviously that means that Joe Milton, who definitely could seek a trade potentially, is going to be the odd man out. And they also got Curious Tunga, defensive tackle from Arizona. I think he's going to become more of a depth piece over with the team. And then Matt Collins, who was a former Bill. And Anthony obviously gave me a little scouting report already about him. So I'm very excited about Hollins, to come to the team. So those are all the moves that the Pats had. And I do think there's going to be more moves to be done for sure.
Well, speaking of the Bills, Anthony, you already talked about the moves. I'm more curious, what is the fan temperature in Buffalo right now so far with all the moves that are being made?
We're actually pretty hyped because we know we already have the offense. The offense hasn't been the problem. The offense is always putting up points in the playoffs. It's just we can never stop nobody. We're giving up 30 points in all our playoff losses. So we've been signing a lot of defensive players. I know I mentioned Joey Bosa, Michael Hyatt. We also brought in Pittsburgh's defensive tackle, Larry Ogunjobi. He's a great penetrator. He's over 300 pounds, and we're really undersized at defensive tackle. So to bring in another guy who's over 300 pounds at defensive tackle is a huge asset. And we also got 2 fifth-round compensatory picks. We got a 5th and a 7th back from the Cowboys for Kamar Elam. So the Bills are sitting on, I think, 11 draft picks, 10 to 11 draft picks total. So we have a lot of draft capital to continue to build our team. And it's about time that we finally start building up our defense, and something that the Bills should have did a couple years ago.
I'm going to ask you the cliche question right now. Is this a Super Bowl or bust team now?
Well, I think when you have a quarterback like Josh Allen, I think every year is a Super Bowl or bust. So to answer your question, I would say yeah. But the clock is definitely ticking, and the pressure, I think, is more so on this year, particularly on McDermott and Bean, to finally put this team and get this team to the Super Bowl. So I would say it's always championship or bust, but I think the pressure is a little bit higher this season.
Okay, now let's head to our boys in Chicago, because we haven't heard a lot about the Bears, really, with moves. I know there's been moves that have happened with the Bears. Zan, why don't you take a lead here to start? What have we been hearing in the Bears circles?
Sure. So, I like the direction that the team is going in. It's pretty obvious. There's a brand new regime. There already seems to be a brand new culture. There already seems to be some sort of, excellence counter being built by Ben Johnson and co. And it's clear that the Bears are willing to spend money. They got some veteran pieces, just from around the league. But the guy that I think is going to be a veteran presence and is going to make the defense better is Grady Jarrett. Every single time I watched him on Atlanta, this season, he was wreaking havoc. He was flying around. He was doing everything that he needed to do. And again, obviously we're a month away from the draft, but I just feel like if you can get some pieces around Caleb Williams, this team has a chance to be really something special. And I think the vibe around Chicago is that there's finally hope. We finally have the coach that we want. The quarterback is slowly but surely getting his legs under him fully to know that this is his team. And I feel like there's almost like a bit of I wouldn't say a referendum. That's not the right word. A revitalization. It's not fully there yet. It's probably going to take a couple years to fully turn this thing around, but I think they're definitely in a much better place than what they were a year ago. And especially from a head coaching standpoint, I don't think they could have been more of a home run than they did with Johnson. And I think the Bears have more moves to come, but I think it's only the beginning. But to spend, what was it, $88 million or so this week alone just goes to show that the Bears are invested fully in this turnaround, and they want to make it work. So,
all right, Grant, you want to pick up from there? Your thoughts in Bears country over there?
So the thing about the Bears, the last oh my God, it feels like the last 10 years is they have failed to address the trenches for both sides of the ball, really. And
it's true.
This year they threw that out the window. They completely revamped their interior of their offensive line with the trades for Joe Thuney and Jonah Jackson. And then now this one isn't official yet because he's still got to get his physical, but we also signed former Falcons center Drew Dahlman to a 3-year, $42 million deal, which every Bears fan was talking about him as the one center option that they wanted them to go after, and everyone was a little nervous, with his dad playing for San Francisco during his playing career, that Dahlman might go to San Francisco, but Dahlman actually turned down more money to come to Chicago. So the only thing that's really holding back from that being announced is his physical, which I would hope is going to be announced sometime tomorrow. But I mean, they've addressed the biggest issues that they've had on the offensive line and the defensive line. And I can't wait to see this team play. And I do think that things are on the up and up. I really hope that this is a playoff team. I don't really care if it's a first round exit. I just want to make it to the playoffs. But that might be hard with our division.
I'll ask you both very quick question, 1 to 2 sentence answer. Do we expect a much better year out of Caleb Williams this coming year?
I would say, yeah, I would.
I would too, because you just look at the play style that the play calling style that Johnson had in Detroit, and I know it's going to be a little different, but I do imagine that he's going to make sure that he makes it look different, but the results are going to be the same.
All right. I saved the best for last, and when I mean last, I mean miserable.
When you say best, you mean worst.
Yes. So I'll ask you, Nick, first. Temperature of the situation with the New York Jets. We already know about all the moves and the happenstance. Where's your temperature right now with this organization?
Well, what do you mean? You mean like temperature being high a good thing or a bad thing? Well, what does that mean?
Temperature meaning anger, if it's high or
low,
or
I wouldn't say I'm angry per se. I mean, like, I'm not going to be angry after necessarily when they're just trying to like clean house or whatever. I don't expect much. I don't have the energy to be angry anymore, to be honest. In terms of the moves they've made, I don't like a whole lot of them very much. I am questioning whether or not they made a mistake moving on from Rodgers. And I said this on the show on Moving the Goalposts. I said I really think that I'm really questioning that. I'm really thinking that they might have made a mistake, because you know what, they have to eat $49 million for him out of Aaron Rodgers' contract to get rid of him, and then pay an extra $40 million, $20 million a year for Justin Fields. And it's just like, is Justin Fields really putting you in a better position than Rodgers does? Like, I don't think that's a given. So now you're just spending more money to just be probably even worse than they were last year. And I think it's going to come back to bite them.
I mean, I need 2 hours to really go over my dramas with the Jets.
Think about this for a second. Would they not have just been better off sticking with Rodgers another year? Rather, it would have been at least been cheaper. And I think it would have. And honestly, I would probably rather have Rodgers than Justin Fields. I mean, like, I trust him a little more. Justin Fields hardly even starts. At least for Aaron Rodgers is still good enough to be a starter.
But maybe Justin, I'm not defending, but I'm just saying, like, Justin Fields maybe in a Jet uniform gets a chance to get more reps, as opposed to what happened in Pittsburgh, where he was fighting with Russell Wilson all year over who was starting. So
I mean, Russell Wilson's not that good anymore. If Justin Fields really were so good, he would have been able to start for the Steelers. I mean, like, it's just, I mean, we all know Russell Wilson is fairly washed up. And here's the thing. Justin Fields, the Jets, like we've talked about, the Jets are really bad at developing quarterbacks. And Justin Fields has never truly been developed. And that's the problem. So I don't believe that Aaron Glenn, a defensive coordinator with no head coaching experience, is going to be able to develop Justin Fields. I think this is going to be a disaster. And I think that it will look worse. The Jets will look stupid for doing this rather than continuing with Rodgers. I'm not saying I like the way Rodgers has been playing, but I mean, of all your alternatives, that could have been the best one.
I get it, but I don't think the Jets wanted to deal with all the outside media BS that Aaron Rodgers
They
causes.
deal with outside media BS anyway, no matter who their quarterback is. I mean, I would rather deal with the outside media BS and at least be a better team. I mean, like, if their goal is to tank and that's why they got Justin Fields, okay, then maybe that's a good idea. But I don't think that that's what they're doing. I think this was a dumb move.
See, here's the problem.
Rodgers.
But here's the problem. Nobody knows, including the owners, have no idea what's going on with the Jets organization currently right now. Woody Johnson is probably up there as one of the worst owners in the NFL.
He could
Period.
be the worst.
I mean, and that's saying a lot with a certain Jerry Jones in Dallas.
But Jerry Jones is not a bad owner. Jerry Jones is a good owner. He's just not well liked.
No. Jerry Jones is a good owner. He's a bad GM.
Oh,
Correct.
that's a good point.
But at least, okay, that is true to an extent. But at least the Cowboys have been good in recent years. The Jets have not.
Wait,
So
what
that's
do
the
you
difference.
classify as good for the Cowboys, though?
The Cowboys were, until this past season, a consistent playoff team. And the only reason they weren't was because of injuries. I mean, like, the Cowboys, outside of the injuries, were at least a playoff team. You cannot compare the Jets and the Cowboys. The Cowboys are a way better franchise.
Oh, no. All time, obviously, they've won more titles. But
even if you look at their leadership, okay, if you look at the Cowboys under Jerry Jones versus the Jets under Woody Johnson, who's a better franchise?
well, that's not even close. It's Jerry Jones. But
Okay, then that comes back to the leadership. Jerry Jones is a good owner. Woody Johnson is not. That is the difference. I know Jerry Jones has made some questionable choices, and he's not very well liked. But I mean, come on, it's ridiculous to compare them.
well, you're right. I think they're bad for different reasons. Is really where that.
Yeah, Jerry Jones is just a little like he's just not really that well liked. But you know what? He's not a bad owner. He's really not a bad owner.
He's kind of like the crazy uncle.
Yeah,
kind of.
He is, and he probably takes a little too long to fire head coaches and things like that. Like, he's made questionable decisions, but the Jets under Woody Johnson are a clown show. I mean, like, the Cowboys at least the Cowboys under Jerry Jones, they went from Tony Romo to Dak Prescott, which Jet fans would dream of. So I don't think these two teams compare at all.
You're right. I don't know. And you've said this to me many times because it's true, but like, you can't fire the owner of the franchise.
Right.
Like,
I mean, like, all the Knick fans pathetically trying to be like telling James Dolan to sell the team. It's like, James Dolan doesn't have to listen to you. Like, what the hell?
I mean, I would say James Dolan is probably a failed businessman in New York, but
it was Charles Dolan who was the original owner and basically gave his son a toy to play with. I mean, like, he inherited he basically inherited the teams.
yeah, look what happened to MSG now. It's freaking bankrupt.
Well, the thing is, the reason the Rangers have had so much more success than the Knicks is because James Dolan doesn't run the team. And it's a little different with the Knicks. But at least now with the Knicks, he doesn't run them as much as he used to. So the less James Dolan is involved, the better the teams are.
Can we say to Woody Johnson, like, hey, hands off, just like sign the checks and call it a day?
We kind of tried that a little bit. What happened was he said, well, actually, we haven't really tried it that much. First of all, in order for him to do that, he has to make that choice himself, and he has to hire the right person, which he hasn't done. Like, the Knicks kind of did that a little. Like, that's what the Knicks did with Leon Rose. The Knicks hired James Dolan hired Leon Rose, and now he's making a lot of the decisions, and that's why the Knicks have been more successful. It's the same thing with the Rangers. Whereas with the Jets, that hasn't happened. All that really happened was Woody Johnson had Aaron Rodgers run the asylum, which you don't have the inmates run the asylum, but hasn't hired but didn't really stepped in with like Joe Douglas and didn't really let him. Like, Joe Douglas was scapegoated a little bit. And that was a big problem with the Jets.
Yeah, that's a good point. But we're pretty much.
That's not true. He might give it to his son, which is what happened when he was in the UK, when he was in the Trump administration.
Good.
And it was indistinguishable. So,
oh God, imagine everything as bad as his stay in the White House. But that'll pretty much do it for our time. I don't know. Does anyone have any final statements they want to make as we wrap this up and we work our way through free agency? Anybody? Forever hold your peace.
I don't think so. I mean, this was a fun stream. It seems like a lot of people watched it, which was very good. Shout out to the 100+ people who tuned in. That was cool.
There's 180 people currently watching as we sit here. So thank you to everybody
and
who
it's
watched.
not all our moms, so that's
No. No, it's not. But if you're intrigued, the people that are watching in here, you go to youtube.com/ETB Network, press the subscribe button. That'd be gladly appreciated as we're trying to get to 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. So please just simply go over to our YouTube channel, hit the subscribe button. It's really not that difficult. Just do us that favor. Also, check this show out on social media, Football Forecast at TFB Forecast ETB. Check out our Substack, where we have a lot of football content coming out of there as well. etbnetwork.substack.com as well. And yeah, so that'll pretty much do it for this NFL free agency frenzy, as we've officially hit 8 p.m. Eastern. So for everybody here at the ETB Network, have a good night. Enjoy the rest of NFL free agency, and we will see everybody next time. Have a good night, everybody.
Have a good one.